So I've got some great news. Finally cracked the code. The OctoPush 5 was a success. So these are my first ones, and then I did a small production run so that I could figure out, using the video editing footage, how much time it takes to do every step in production so that I could calculate the cost of making that product to see if it works. And it did. The numbers came in, and I was impressed. So the OctoPush 3 was more costly to produce, even though it might look simpler. I spent a lot more time on the drill press recessing those bumpers in, and that was kind of an overkill. And I made a couple other improvements. The biggest one was I changed this stop here and moved it further back so that there's a solid wood surface there as the contact stop, because I did have some slippage here a few times doing heavy passes, and that's not a good thing. So that's a necessary design improvement over the OctoPush 3, and I changed the angle of the handle slightly and added these handle bumpers and eliminated the foam grip, and this was an expensive part as well. So I reduced costs to the point where this is going to be $40 plus shipping to buy this as a finished product without the bumpers installed. This is what the product will look like, what you'll get for 40 bucks, and then you'll spend about 5 minutes screwing in the bumpers with just a hand driver, Phillips number 2, and that's all that's required. So I think that's going to be the way to go to get the best product for the best price with minimal setup and effort. So the biggest improvement in time savings was this drilling jig that I made, and it eliminated 80% of the drill press operation, because I could do this just with a hand drill without clamping anything in. I just put the push stick in the vise and I can drill all those holes just with these little jigs and just get it done in less than a minute, whereas the drill press was taking much longer, and generally things were slower on the drill press, so doing it by hand saved considerable time to do all of these bumpers here. So that was the biggest advantage that I got. And I also eliminated the handle cutting on the router table. I was doing a whole nother template step for that, whereas with the new one I just did freehand and then some cleanup sanding. That ended up being faster to eliminate that extra router table setup. So some big improvements I made. This is the pattern jig I made to making the hardwood stick in this shape, and that worked out pretty good. So all in all, it was a successful production run, and the product turned out good. It has the same functionality as the OctoPush 3 and then some. I like the handle a lot better, and you know, try it out, see if you like it. So I'm going to do some test cuts on my table saw using the new OctoPush 5. I was asked a question: does it make sense to put this much time, effort, and money in a table saw push stick that will just get wrecked? And the answer is yes. I use this type of push stick for 95% of all the stock feeding operations. But I have a collection here of sacrificial push sticks that are used for making both thin rips, like anything less than a ½ inch in thickness. I'll use this push stick here. This is actually a very handy one to have in the collection and is a highly recommended addition. So I would never use this for making anything that would be thinner than 3/4 inch. I wouldn't want to cut into the bumpers. And I have, this is an example of a sacrificial push stick where I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just cut through it. And I have a variety of other ones, like this is one of my first ones and after a while they just get kind of chewed up like that. But I definitely use the all-wood versions of the push sticks. I use this one for doing very thin rips, 1/16 of an inch. And these, actually, this one looks like it's pretty much wrecked. But, you know. So I hope that answers that question. Not one push stick is going to do everything, but this is definitely going to do the majority. And it's good to have a collection like this. So this template pattern is the old template B. That was from my first OctoPush video. So it's just a very basic and simple design. And this is the one that I started with before I started adding the bumpers on to experiment with that. So one of the big advantages of this type of push stick is the ability to do mid-panel stock feeding. And this is useful for feeding long stock in a continuous motion, and you'll get a better quality of cut that way. And it's also useful when by chance you come across a piece of warped lumber and you cut it on the saw. You can feed it in its center, and this creates less binding as opposed to feeding it on its edge, which can push against the blade. Another big advantage the push stick offers is the ability to make controlled, stopped cuts on the table saw. And if you're making a notch, this is one example, but you never know when you have to back the workpiece out if you're having some kind of problem or an emergency. So it's good to have that extra gripping control just for some added insurance. So I found another good use for this type of push stick as a work-holding device to secure small parts to the table saw sled, and this is very effective for securing oddly shaped parts or very small parts, and eliminates the risk of getting my fingers too close to the blade. But overall it's a very useful thing to have around your table saw.